What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Talking Halos. I'm your host today, Jared Timms, and I'm joined alongside my co-host, my partner in crime. I have a weird feeling, oddly enough, it is negative Nate Green today. Nate's no positivity from you, no positivity on any of the phone calls we've had of late. It's just been constant negative Nateness. How's it going
This
though?
team's trash.
Yep, right,
How,
right,
how
right from
can
it.
you be positive about the worst Angels team in the last decade?
Nate,
You'll find a way. You'll
we grew
find a way.
we grew up in an era of the best Angels baseball of all time?
Okay, that's fine, but this is
We were
the
treated.
they're the worst franchise in professional sports right now.
Not arguing with that. I'm just saying we were treated as kids growing up under the best bit of Angels baseball, arguably like the best franchise that's funny that you mention it because the Angels were arguably the best franchise in sports, and now we're talking about them being the worst franchise in sports. I don't want to talk about like that. We've had
Because then
discussions.
you throw in teams like the Giants, San Francisco Giants. You throw in teams like the Patriots, which were probably the best franchise in professional sports when we were growing up. You throw in teams like the Yankees, who were really good when we were growing up. I mean, it's hard to say the Angels were the best franchise. They were good, but
They were
they are
one of the
definitely
best.
the worst franchise right now.
Well, and definitely one of the worst now. It's been a crazy I mean, let's just call it what, 10 years? It's been a crazy 10 years. I don't want to talk about that though. I do have some positives, Nate, to take away
Sure,
from the
of course,
organization, Nate. I'm not
of
saying the
course.
Angels, the organization in general. But first, before we get going, thank you everybody for watching and listening to this podcast here at Talking Halos. We are sponsored by Blue Wire Media, I think is what it's called, Blue Wire Media. And I would get slapped in the face if I didn't say that. So you can follow us on all our social medias, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Just look up Talking Halos. Follow myself on X or Twitter at Jared_Tim's, Nate at Nate Green 34. Give us 1 minute to pay the bills. And we're back, and let's talk about some of the positives. Nate, I have a couple positives for you. The DSL Angels are headed to the
Yes,
playoffs for the second straight year. This is the fourth straight year for the DSL Angels to be above 500. Tip the cap to Brian Parker and staff for what they've done. Real good job in general. I have one question when it comes to the minor leagues, and I ask this question all the time. I ask this question not just to myself and those around, but I ask it to anybody. Would you rather would you rather your minor league, would you rather your minor leagues have good records and not very good players, or good players and bad records?
that's well. One, I think it's really hard to have good players and a bad record. That's hard to do actually. Um, but I think honestly, the culture of winning is important. I think guys need to learn how to win. They need to learn to win. Um, eh, I think winning is important. Like if you look at the good orgs, they're typically winning minor league championships. If you look at Tampa Bay is typically winning minor league championships. Toronto's not Toronto.
Dodgers.
The Dodgers are typically in minor league championships. Back in the day when St. Louis was one of the best run orgs in um, in the National League, they were winning championships. They were always in championship games. So I think winning helps bring it to the major league level. If you're losing a lot, it breeds more losing.
I like asking that question only because I always get people that say minor league records don't matter, and I say, hold on, they do actually matter because if you are developing players and developing them into good players, those good players are playing good baseball, which means that you're probably winning games in the minor leagues. I think it's fair to say. Can't always say that in the major leagues, but you can definitely say it in the minor leagues. That's for sure. And speaking of minor leagues, again, shout out to the DSL Angels. They're probably going to be the only team. Keep an eye on the Salt Lake Bees. Salt Lake Bees are a game to 2 games out, depending on when you're listening to this. And it's good to see the Salt Lake Bees in the playoff hunt. They haven't been in the playoff hunt in quite a while. So anytime anybody in the Angels org is in the playoffs or in a playoff hunt, it's always fun to talk about them. More minor league stuff that I do, well, now major league stuff. Angels promoted Niko Kavadas. One piece of the Luis Garcia trade, which is good to see. We have we had the draft report, and I don't know if I'm going in and out here. We're gonna take out the mic because the mic has just been atrocious for me of late. Niko Kavadas, let's set expectations. I like to say Trey Cabbage like. You know, he's gonna swing and miss. He's going to hit some home runs, and he's going to walk a lot. He may not play defense like Trey Cabbage, and he may not steal bases like Trey Cabbage, but he's going to have some big power. He's going to hit some home runs. Um, that's kind of where I lie with that. I don't want anybody, just because he comes up and is batting fourth, I don't want anybody to think that he is the savior. He is going to make this team any better down the stretch. Good to see some young kids get some at bats down the stretch here. Cavadas could be is definitely part of the future. I mean, he just started, the Angels have him for 6 years here. But go ahead, set expectations for Niko Kavadas, just because I know everybody thinks like, oh, he's batting fourth. We can put him in the starting lineup next year. He's gonna be an all-star. He's gonna be this, that, and another. Hold tight, guys, please.
We're the only org in Major League Baseball where this guy's hitting fourth. Um, I don't even know how to say it. Like, um, yeah, he can't hit velo. That's the big question mark with him. And we saw it in game one. He struggled a little bit. He's got some pop, can't play defense. Um, I don't know. The Trey Cabbage comp is hard for me to swallow just because Cabbage is so athletic. Like you mentioned, he
30
steals
30
some
guy.
bases. He can play the outfield if need be. He can play a first base. They're saying Niko can't even play first base. Like that's how bad he's been in the minor league. So like the he's a DH only pretty much, and not the best hitter when it comes to how he's looked. So we'll see. I think this is just one of those where it's like, hey, he's Rule 5 eligible at the end of the year. We needed to see something, and if we see something great, if not, like he's probably a DFA candidate in the offseason. As odd as that sounds.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It wouldn't surprise me though. I think that there are a bunch of players above Niko Kavadas that could get DFA'd to make room in the organization. But yeah, I mean, again, good to see guys like Niko Kavadas, Jack Lopez, another guy. Just good to see those type of guys come up and get a shot, get a little bit of pay raise, that type of thing. So, on to the pitching side of stuff. Let's. I got one good news on the pitching side, and I have one not so good news on the pitching side of stuff. And it's not Jose Soriano going on the IL. That sucks and everything, but it's not what we're going to talk about.
But with Soriano, it honestly could just be Phantom IL. Like, let's be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah,
Like his
like
his his innings are up there. He's thrown double the amount of innings he's thrown. He's thrown more innings this year than I think he's thrown his entire major league career.
isn't that
So
what arm fatigue really is? It's just a phantom IL. Like, I
yeah,
mean,
I
sure you can pitch
honestly,
through it.
it's not as I don't think it's a major injury. I think it's more of like, hey, you've thrown 120 innings. Like the most you threw last year was 60, and we're just going to give you a couple extra rest days. Maybe we'll let you throw one more time this year, but you've thrown good. You've kind of proven that you belong to stay, and we'll go from there.
Yep. Yeah. So again, back to the pitching side of stuff, because this is really what I want to cover this podcast. Reed Detmers, real nice start in AAA. Good to see that. Somebody who I don't think the stats necessarily match up with what he's been doing in AAA. He's striking a lot of guys out. He's not walking a lot of guys. A lot of weak contact. It's tough to pitch in AAA for sure. I know his ERA is north of 7, which is probably a little closer to like a 4 ERA in the major leagues, which is still probably better than what he was doing. But he threw 8 innings. I think he had 11 plus strikeouts, walked one guy, gave up a couple hits. I mean, Reed Detmers, big plus there. I know again the season hasn't been fantastic for him by any means, but good to see him pitch well. Do you have any note on Reed Detmers before we get into the complete negative side of stuff?
Well, tomorrow is the day that you and I have been talking about. August 19th, I believe, is the day where the Angels will officially get one more year out of Reed Detmers if they hold them down long enough. So, um, would not be shocked if Detmers comes up sometime next week, just because he did have a really good outing. That they do need starting pitching. You saw Soriano go on the IL. Um, So yeah, I think he's starting to figure it out. The big thing in those outings, the walk was down. That's huge. The whiffs were up. He had a bunch of whiffs on the slider. So I think he might have figured some things out. I think they, you know, got him in a place where he's comfortable enough to be able to throw every fifth day. So uh, I wouldn't be shocked if he's up in the next week.
Yeah, and I went back and watched the start. It felt like the slider had a lot more depth on it. It wasn't just that 0-0 spinning slider, which is a changeup. It looked like it had a lot more depth on it. So I don't know if they changed something up or anything like that. But yeah, the slider worked really well. But the fastball was sneaky good as well in there. And it's just, again, just good to see him have a good start. And you mentioned it already. It wouldn't surprise me if he was up. But also, you look at it, what he's done in AAA, and it's not like he deserves a call up either. You know, I know it's hard. It's the hitting's crazy. I mean, Keston here has 17 home runs in like 40 games or something stupid like
I think
that.
it's like 20.
It's something stupid.
It's
It's
crazy. His
unbelievable.
numbers are crazy.
Yeah, he's on pace to break Barry Bonds' record in 20 games. It's something crazy, but yeah, regardless, it's not like Detmers is pitching out of his mind, and it's like, oh, we need to get this guy back up. It's good to have the extra year. He is the future of the Angels rotation. He really is. I know people aren't going to like that, but he's a very, very good pitcher and has all the pieces to be a very good all-star caliber pitcher for sure. Now let's get on to the negative side of stuff because I know this is what you want to talk about. Griffin Canning, what do we think his future looks like as an Angel? Because it's I mean, you mentioned it earlier, and the more I thought about it, I was like, he could be a non-tender candidate.
No, he is a non-tender
Yeah,
candidate. There's no could be. He is a non-tender candidate. Um, um, I, it, how do I say this politely? It's the worst numbers he's ever had. Um,
it's the
the
second worst ERA though, so
second worst ERA in Major League Baseball
no, the
of
second worst
qualified
of his
pitchers.
career. He's got a
Oh,
5.4 this year. He had a 5.6 in like 90 innings the year 2 years ago in 2021.
okay.
Dang,
He's
but still
bad.
not good.
He's been very very bad. The strikeouts are down. The velo is eh. Um, I don't know. I just don't see a future with him. He's a non-tender candidate that if you bring back on a minor league deal, I'm not upset about it. But putting him on a major league deal where he's going to make major league money, which means you're forced to kind of put him in the rotation probably as your number five, like that's not something I want to do. We'll see. The Angels didn't DFA or they did not non-tender Jose Suarez in a very similar fashion last year, where the Angels honestly were in a pretty similar spot where it was like, hey, we don't really have starting pitching depth, so we're just gonna roll out Jose Suarez. Hope he's good, and if he's not, we'll figure it out. And they gave him a long leash. So I'm curious to see how long the leash is with Griffin Canning. The one thing that does worry me with my comment about the long leash is they talked so much about Griffin Canning this year. Like go the off season, the spring training. That was the number one pitcher they talked about all off season was Griffin Canning. Oh, Griffin Canning this, Griffin Canning that. Like that worries me a lot because that means there's probably a long leash for him. I could see him having to put up these similar numbers all the way through June or July of next year before he kind of gets DFA'd if they tender him a contract. It is the last year of his team control next year, so they're not losing too much if they do non-tender him. Probably going to be close to about 4 or 5 million to keep Griffin Canning around, which I know people are like, oh, 4 or 5 million, that's not that much, but the way it looks like the Angels kind of are penny pushers right now. They're trying not to spend too much money. So I think it makes a lot of sense to non-tender him.
Yeah, yeah. I want to see Griffin Canning succeed just because, we've seen glimpses of him be very, very good. It continues to go back to a couple things for me. One, I always question, does he tip his pitches? And I don't know if it's always or not. The one thing I can think of is that he does show the ball right here. And I always wonder if that's something that hitters can pick up. I don't know. I've never stood in the box against Griffin Canning, but when you see him pitch, it's kind of the John Lackey in a sense, how John Lackey used to come forward with the ball. Griffin Canning kind of puts the ball right out for you to see. I don't know if that's part of it or not. I'm not going to make that excuse by any means. He's been bad this year. He's been bad for a couple of years now. Another another thing, and Nate, you and I have always talked about this. He has three fastballs. He has two pitches really. He has three fastballs and
Fastball and a
a
curveball.
slider, if that's what we
Yeah.
want to call it. Three fastballs and a power curveball. He really does. I'd love to see him get something a little bit slower, maybe in the low 80s, rather than seeing the cutter, a straight
90,
four seam
92.
fastball, and a sinker or a two seam, whatever you want to call it, and then the curveball that's mid 80s. I'd love to see the curveball slow down a little bit. I'd love to see just something um, a little bit less, if that makes sense. Maybe a changeup, something that moves a little bit more. Because honestly, if you're a hitter, you're sitting on speed. Like that's really what you are. You're looking for something hard.
Hard.
If it's moving away, you take it the other way. If it's straight, you hit it up the middle. And if it's coming in on you, you're trying to pull the ball. Like really, that's what it is with Griffin Canning. It really is. And I wish that didn't have to have this conversation year in and year out, but I feel like we've had this conversation for the last 3 years on this podcast about Griffin Canning. And I wish that was an adjustment that was going to get made. And I feel like every spring training I go and I'm like, oh, that curveball looks a little different. And then I look at the
It's the
velo
same.
and it's like 84, 85 miles an hour. It's like, well, okay, that's fine. And that stuff plays up if you're throwing 96, 97, 98 miles an hour. That's fine. But when you're 92 to 94, maybe touching 95, 96, it's not what it can be. And that's the pitching side, the pitching coach side of me coming out and being like, man, I wish he had just something a little softer, a little more movement, a little bit this, a little bit this, a little bit that. Because I mean, he might actually be a good bullpen candidate. Not for $4 to $5 million, but someone you put in the bullpen and let him throw a fastball and a slider, like a sinker and slider guy out of the bullpen, and just let him go throw an inning and see if he can hit 98 miles an hour. Because I mean, he's hit 96 as a starter, 96,
Hmm.
7 as a starter. I'm sure 98's there. And if he can sit 95 to 97 as a reliever, kind of really an interesting pitcher with an 84, 85 mile an hour slider. That wouldn't be too bad. So I don't know. Just some thoughts, food for thought there on that side of stuff. I don't know. You got anything else on the Griffin Canning side of stuff? It sucks to see. I don't like talking about players and talking, that they need to be gone, they need to be DFA'd. But it's one of those things where I mean, we've been sitting here for 3, 4, 5 years with Griffin Canning and saying
Hmm.
the same exact thing over and over again.
Yep.
No adjustments have been made.
None.
So
I
it's like,
think that's the big thing for me is like if you see, hey, Canning, hey, he's working on a changeup, it's just not working for him. He doesn't have the command of it, or he's working on something. It's like, okay, you see the the transition happening, and you're like, okay, he there's a chance of him figuring this out. But it's literally been the same pitch mix for the last 5, 6 years. Like ever since they drafted him, it's been the same pitch mix. So it's like you don't really see any adjustments being made, and you're like, that's what I think is the most frustrating thing about this is it's literally the same guy for the last 5, 6 years.
yeah, and if a guy like Patrick Sandoval or Reed Detmers continues to struggle, I feel like I'm going to have a little more of a leash than I'm going to have with a guy like Reed Detmers or even Jose Suarez, who we didn't see the adjustments from Jose Suarez either.
Hmm.
We didn't see him try
It's
to
the
make any
same dude. They
pitch
just
pitch adjustments. Yeah, it's just the same thing over and over again. But like Patrick Sandoval, we saw him throw the slider harder. We saw him do different things. Reed Detmers, we saw him tinker with the slider. Like, and there's actual evidence of that. Where Griffin Canning, a guy like Jose Suarez. I mean, I even like. I know you don't like Tyler Anderson, but I give him a little bit of lenience because he tried throwing the sweeper like last year. Like he did tinker with it. It's always rough to get a guy from the Dodgers after he had a career year, but you can at least tip the cap and be like, hey, Tyler Anderson tried a new pitch. He tried to mix it up a little bit. It didn't work for him, and here we are now. So yeah, it's tough. I'd love to just see some actual like pitch adjustments with Griffin Canning, something a little bit different. But it's been 3, 4 years and we just haven't seen that yet. So last thing I want to talk about, kind of on the fun side of stuff, Players Weekend. I enjoy seeing all the bats. I enjoy seeing all the cleats. I miss the jerseys. I know that there have been a lot of different jerseys, but I miss seeing the jerseys and the nicknames. Thoughts on Players Weekend? I enjoy it. I like seeing the bats. I like seeing the cleats. I think the guys have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, and Logan O'Hoppe did a pretty good job. He was at the Children's Hospital, had them draw on his chest protector. That was pretty cool.
Yep.
It's really fun because you get to see some personalities come out, and you get to see like um, some guys show like, hey, I am fun, and not just like, hey, I'm just a robot type of person. So, yeah, the jerseys would have been a lot of fun where you get to see a little bit more. I mean, Kyle Seager, not Corey, like all the or Shane Bieber, not Justin. Like, actually, I think Kyle's is Corey's brother or something like that. Like, you get to see a little bit of like, hey, that's kind of funny side of these guys because a lot of it is very serious. Like, you're not seeing, especially from the Angels, you don't really see a lot of energy out of some of these guys. Yeah, you have the Netos, you have Adele a little bit, sometimes Moniak, but for the most part, it's a pretty like cut and dry group. It's not like a lot of emotion and energy. And I guess you'll see it from Ohapi from time to time. But that's a fun thing about Players Weekend is you get to see some of these guys characters come out, and it's like, oh, that's this guy's a little bit of fun, or this guy's boring. He has the same name as he always does. Whatever. So I like it. I wish that there was a little bit more that they did, but I mean, it's fun. You get to see the pencil bats and everything.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to see it twice a year, to be honest. Like, you do it right from once at the beginning of the year, once near like right now at the end of the year, where fans are kind of losing interest. Football season's right around the corner, things like that. So it's good to it's good, definitely good to see it. I like it. That's all I got. Nate, you got any final thoughts before we let everybody go?
I do have one, and we might have to talk about it for a minute. I'm sorry, buddy. I was just complaining about this right before the show started. How is Jose Cisneros still on this roster? It's kind of an embarrassment. It looks like he has been DFA'd. Um, and this is going to be interesting. The guy who's on the roster, I think, is going to shock you. I could give you 5 guesses. I don't think you named the guy.
What is the question?
Who took Jose Cisneros' spot on the roster?
When he got hurt the first time?
No, no, right now they just the lineup card has no Cisnero. It has somebody else on there.
And I'm trying to figure out who took his spot.
Yes,
Pitcher?
I don't think you
Can I get a
because
pitcher?
it
Can I
just
get a
makes
position?
it literally makes no sense who took his spot.
Do I get a pitcher or position player or no?
No, it's a pitcher. It's a pitcher.
Makes zero sense.
Yes, absolutely 0 cents.
Okay, so somebody got DFA'd, which means they brought somebody up from AAA. It's a pitcher,
Yes,
and
and
he's not on the 40 man.
I didn't say that.
Well, then he's on the 40 man, and he's in AAA on the 40 man. It's not Jose Suarez. I know you didn't. You would have been a lot more upset if it was
Yeah, yeah,
Suarez.
yeah. That would have made zeros, like less than 0 cents. This just makes like 1% sense.
Johnny Cueto?
No,
That was my first guess. I gotta go. I'm gonna go look at the roster just because I don't look at Rock or Salt Lake all that often. Dude, I'm looking for somebody that makes zero sense. Not Bachman. Davis Daniel was starting. Makes zero sense.
Victor Medeiros.
Madero's got called up. What?
Like I said, makes 0 sense. He went from AA to high A
No,
2 weeks ago.
he was in high A. Like that's
Yeah, he went from AA to high A because he wasn't pitching good in double A. That's why I said it didn't make a lot of sense. I was trying to like not give it away, but be like, hey,
no.
this
You would.
really doesn't make sense.
I mean, I guess it makes. I'm trying to make it make sense. I can't. No, there's nothing that makes sense there. That's bizarre, and I don't like it. I don't like it either. They mess with Maderos' arm slot. He's a higher arm slot. He's throwing this big loopy curveball. The velo's been down this year. He's not the same guy. It's really stinks because I really like Maderos. He was a top 10 prospect in the org for me. I thought he would be a. I thought he was that. I compared him to Chase Silseth. I really did. Like it was that type of stuff. And when you watch him pitch, if he pitches today or in the coming days, watch him pitch and tell me he's not the same guy. He really is not the same guy. There's no movement on the fastball anymore. He doesn't have the sweeper. He's got this big curveball, maybe a little bit of a cutter of a slider. And he doesn't have the nice, he didn't really throw a lot of the changeup anymore. So yeah, that move worries me a lot. I don't know about that one. I really
That
don't.
was a head scratcher when I saw the name. It makes sense to DFA Jose Cisneros. He hasn't been good. It was time to move on from him. But there were other guys that you could have given an opportunity to. And I'm not upset about Victor Medeiros getting the opportunity. I think that him getting an opportunity now is kind of good because it gives them a chance to really see, hey, can he get major league hitters out as a bullpen guy? If he can, maybe he's, you know, part of the pen next year. But just an odd probably month for the guy, struggles in AA, gets called in the manager's office, says, hey, bro, you're going to high A. And then 2 weeks later gets a phone call, hey, you're getting called up to the bigs. Like, I don't know if that happens very often.
No, I'm going to take a wild guess and say that I'm trying to think of who the manager is in Tri City. He doesn't get too many of those calls saying, "Hey, you're going to Anaheim."
I
Um,
don't think he's ever had that
I,
call.
I don't think so either. That's interesting. So a little bit of fun here at the
It
end of the
was,
show.
yeah, it was Tri City, right?
Yeah, he was in Tri City.
Yeah. Yep.
A little bit of fun here at the end of the show. That's mind boggling to me. I don't know. I don't understand it. But hey, I'm not getting paid to make these moves. So with all that being said, thank you so much for watching and listening. Go ahead and follow us on all our social medias, X, Instagram, and Facebook. Follow myself on X at Jared_Tim's, Nate at Nate Green 34. Guys, thank you so much for listening and watching. Have a great rest of your day.